Hey guys, and welcome to another video. It's a patch day! It's been a while since I've been able to talk to you guys about some of the active updates going to the game, but finally we've got patch sizes that are reasonable enough to talk about. Today I want to pick out just a few things, especially some changes that have sparked some pretty big topics out there, and also to keep you guys in the loop as to what exactly is changing with the game now that we are over a month in Heart of Thorn. For what it's worth as well, today we got 100,000 subscribers. The video we're doing isn't particularly special. Nothing really is going to be changing at all, but I did want to take a second just to talk about that fact and say thank you basically to everybody who is still actively watching. On the screen right now you should see this is what my channel looked like actually a long time ago, back when we had 1,000 subs. We are now 100 times that size. That's kind of mental, but yeah, really, really great stuff, and here's to looking at the future. Also, I have been promising you guys a raid lore video on that topic. That was going to be today, but of course we had a patch, so probably come tomorrow or the day after. Alright, what's the main thing that's happened? Let's cut straight to it. PvP leagues. This was one of the big things that was coming with Heart of Thorns, and indeed now has officially been dropped into the game. You can now actually participate in this first season and hopefully do fairly well. Now, a couple of things didn't happen before this league. Many of us, I think, were hoping to. And number one is the idea of a solo queue. Solo queue has not become a thing. If you compete, you can duo, you can play solo if you like, but prepare for the fact that you may, if there's low population, be placed up against a 5-man team and may get steamrolled. Hopefully they do end up adding a solo queue dedicated option sometime in the future. But for now, that's kind of your lot. For what it's worth, if you're not really that interested in PvP, I for one will be looking much more at it in the coming days. And don't be too scared to find just a single friend and do some great duo queues. If you've got a really powerful build, if you've got a friend that can run a complementary and also decent build, you're good at Conquest or Stronghold together, do try that out, because you'll have a lot more success than you'd expect just duoing, and it's far more accessible than you might imagine. But of course, with this has come the new PvP back piece. We did have a post on it. I'll be doing a dedicated video on PvP leagues, my impressions of how that's going in the coming days. But for now, just know that they're out there and you guys can go for it. The other big thing we were expecting before PvP leagues, of course, was also a big balance patch. Wasn't this what ArenaNet promised us? In fact, they said there was going to be a balance patch before a league, and they said that shortly after Heart of Thorns there was going to be a balance patch addressing specifically raid-based stuff. Neither of which have happened for this first league. I guess they think, oh, it's the first league, we'll leave it. I don't know, man, though. It's really not a great start. The idea of 4 balance patches a year is a really exciting one, but it doesn't seem like that's going to be starting for a long time now, not until the next season. So that's kind of lame. Now, that's not to say skills haven't changed. Importantly, actually, looking at the Elementalist balance, and specifically stuff to do with Tempest, I feel kind of like a bad player. Little did I know that one of our traits, Lucid Singularity, actually AoE healed. It was an unintended effect of the trait, probably previous balance that was associated with it from when they were developing Heart of Thorns. It actually had a component that meant after you finished an overload, it would AoE heal people around you. I had no idea that existed, and I've played a damn lot of Heal Tempest and looked into a variety of different trait combinations, so I'm just kind of sat here feeling bad now. There were some other weird things with the Elementalist overloads as well, for what it's worth. I did notice this with a friend, and I said, hey, this looks kind of weird, but they assured me it wasn't a mechanical thing, but it is true. The bigger races, if you made a Norn who was max size and you used Overload Fire versus an Asura who was minimum sized, you would have a far bigger fire field as that Norn. Yep, that's true. They did actually have, for a brief period of time, the race and character creation cosmetics decisions you made actually affect the gameplay, specifically through Overload Fire and Water. They had bigger ranges, but those have been nerfed down now, and of course we only find out about these things until it's too late. The main thing with Elementalist, though, and this has been a big topic that I'm going to try and stay as balanced on as possible, because my initial thoughts towards this were fairly dismissive, is the fact that ArenaNet have, once again, culled away visual effects on skills. Specifically, the auras have had a big hit. So, this is, for what it's worth, in my opinion, a good thing for them to be doing with the game. There was a bit of a discussion on it before. I never really engaged on it very much on the channel a while ago, again with Elementalists. So as an Elementalist main, this means something to me. The fire auto attacks for Elementalists changed from being fairly large, impressive fire pools with a big explosive hit when they hit an enemy into very, very small little kind of tiny balls. The joke was they turned from fireballs into fire spits. There are a lot of arguments going around from people at the moment, especially considering that this change occurred, plus many others, and ArenaNet have said they are continuing to nerf skill effects, saying that the devs are destroying the aesthetic of Guild Wars 2. That it's a real shame and a big waste that the devs would put so much time into beautiful effects and then just cull them and nerf them out super bad. There's a bit of a happy hate train going on at the moment, as there always is after a big release, and you know, people are saying, oh, this is a terrible decision. With specifically the fire auto attacks on staff for Elementalists, I think this is a good change for one simple reason. You don't need a big flashy effect on every skill. In my opinion, the way that combat would work best, this idea of visceral combat, engaging visual combat, okay, with pretty effects and stuff, is when the significant key skills are the ones with the biggest tells. The key abilities are the ones that should be getting screen shake. The abilities that provide powerful mitigation like stability and invulnerabilities. The abilities that have extremely high cooldowns and tells to be dodged. These are the skills that deserve flashy effects. The fire attunement elementalist skill for the staff was an auto attack. Auto attacks shouldn't have all the big flash associated with them, otherwise we end up with the game we've had since launch, where just everything looks too bright, too flashy, and it's kind of incomprehensible. Now, to be fair, you've kind of got three camps of people at the moment. People who think it's okay, they should nerf more skill effects down where appropriate. People who feel like they don't care about any of that, they just want flashy effects on absolutely everything, and they want this disgusting orgy of effects that you can't read anything. And then you've got the third camp. These people do have a pretty valid point, and that's the idea that ArenaNet shouldn't just force us into either having a nice fireball or a bad fireball. There should be an option, a graphical option that allows us to choose the culling of skill effects. Beyond that, it's far from a common feature in other MMOs to see your own skill effects be untampered with, but other players' skill effects be culled down. So, for example, I get my flashy or fire auto attack, but I don't get all the visual space wasted by a billion other elementalists in the open world doing it at the same time. And this I can absolutely agree with. It does feel like a real shame that ArenaNet are just kind of pushing us in this situation where everything gets culled down. But I guess maybe they've got some weird sense of balance there where they want new players to only have to learn one visual effect, one tell for one ability across the board, and so they're just trying to nerf things down. Why am I talking about this so much? We're talking about an auto attack. Well, because with this change, while there weren't any real balance changes, today the auras in the game have also all changed, been culled down to be a lot more uniform in their appearance, to be less prominent on the battlefield, and so this once again has drastically changed the way certain elements of the combat look. Now, with the aura situation, you could see it as a bit more severe. To read it through in the patch notes, it's easy to rage at the fact that so much stuff is listed as having its skill effects removed and that, you know, this is somehow, you know, a really bad situation we're in. But I think, honestly, when you look at how prevalent the auras are across the entire game, they're not too much. But when you did look at situations where a single player ran, say, an Auramancing spec, as many of my videos have shown, Auramancing is actually something that I've shown off way back from the very first year of Guild Wars 2 coming out, back when we could pump out fire auras on our signets. It is a big contributor to making the game difficult to read. And for that reason, I do agree with the change. But, this comes with a big but, I don't agree with the way they did it. See, you can nerf the auras down to make them less obtrusive, but they shouldn't have made them as uniform as they did. Not all the auras affect the combat in the same way. A fire aura, for example, is often never going to be played around. You don't need to play around it. It's a little bit of splash burning if you're in melee, bit of might on the enemy, and is it worth ceasing to attack to play around it, or continue pushing out your damage? Almost similar situation for frost auras. Yes, you're doing 10% less damage for that little period of time, and you're getting chill thrown on you, but you're only really going to care about that little bit of chill in very specific situations where you're chasing someone down that don't come up too much. The radiant aura is something that's fairly ignorable. On the other hand, though, stuff like magnetic aura and shocking aura, depending on your builds, these things do need to be fairly visible. These things we should be seeing more of, and it's not fair that these effects are basically the same visibility as the other ones. I think that was a huge oversight by the devs, and that's the main problem with this change. Not that the skill effects have been culled down in the first place, but that they're a little bit too uniform. Now again though, I will temper my argument there a little though, and point out the fact that these auras do appear on our active effects. And I would say that the main place I'm going to be looking for a magnetic aura or a shocking aura or any of them to play around is the buff bar of my opponent. You tend to focus on that so much anyway when watching out for protection, when watching out for Aegis, when watching out for high levels of might or other key factors, that it's far more reliable to look for the magnetic aura there than to look at the physical enemy character model, which you're mostly looking at their offensive capabilities or their own animations and counting dodge rolls. And this was all true before the patch. Don't believe me? Think away from structured PvP and world versus world. People weren't relying in these massive engagements on physically looking at the person they're attacking for the magnetic aura. They were looking for that little icon to appear below the bar, and that actually hasn't changed. And for what it's worth, I don't just think this is about PvP at all. Again, I played a lot of Auramancing. I've played a lot of Auramancing support, and I've streamed it. I've made videos of it. I have very openly complained, as many of us did pre-launch, that when you push raids up to 10-man, when you're fighting enemies with large hitboxes, and there are various animations that scale with size based on enemies with large hitboxes, that the game is too difficult to see. That many of the audience responses I've had from people who watch me raiding, watch me do, intense 5-man content or anything where I'm running an Auramancer build, is that the game's unreadable, that it looks ridiculous, that it's too flashy, that you can't see what's going on. This absolutely is not just about PvP, this is just as much about PvE, and especially when you consider stuff like raids, the fact that we're at 10-man party sizes now, and you consider the huge weighting on large open world meta events like the Vinetooth, like Dragon's Stand, and any of the existing world bosses. These are all important changes for there too. It's very easy to be the guy that says, oh, they're just doing it because they're pushing for esports, and terrible, terrible esports is dragging the rest of the game down. But you're being a little bit short-sighted there. Trust me, I've seen how much damage ArenaNet's focus on PvP has done, and you're right to be angry about that. But the skill effect culling, as a general concept, is valuable to all three modes of the game. Overall, I don't think the gameplay should change too much. There's a bit too much discussion on this topic, but ArenaNet still aren't excused. They've dropped the ball in a couple of ways. I don't think all the auras should have been uniform, and we'll see how much that really changes things. World versus World fixes! World vs. World was utterly broken. I still have not done my spotlight on it. Why? Well, because I keep hearing about how terribly broken it is, and it doesn't really make me very excited to play. Couple this with the fact that Colin Johansson has mentioned offhandedly a large World vs. World rework. The specific comments we had a while ago about how World vs. World having a big redesign wasn't in the scope of the expansion. I just feel a little alienated. It's a big barrier to entry to find a community to do it in the first place, and I don't feel like there's much reward there. So I've ignored it, and specifically a bug that meant that rangers with longbows could just straight up plain shoot through walls and kill people manning siege on the inside kind of made the entire game type seem a bit silly. Well, at least that bug's been fixed, guys. But with the same breath, ArenaNet did make another change. Previously, before this patch, if I was on one character and I acquired a soulbound item that could be used as a currency, then I swapped to another character, I could still spend that soulbound item as the currency. And you might think, well, when did this ever happen? Well, it happened quite a lot with Heart of Thorns in World vs. World specifically. Well, now they've patched it so that you can't do this anymore. So if you want a reliable way of getting World vs. World currencies and stuff, it's almost like they're saying you cannot ult in World vs. World. Absolutely seems like an oversight, and maybe not worth talking about for now until they figure some more stuff out. On the item front, though, there have been some good changes. Number one, and primarily, the brunt of many jokes about the Guildhall decorations has been the enormous cost on scribes to craft them in the first place. Now, this again is a pretty big discussion. I kind of like the idea that many of the Guildhall decorations are really prestigious and difficult to get. So when you find someone with a beautiful kitted out living room in a Guildhall, you're like, wow, there's an insane amount of creativity here, but also in-game effort, that's taken months to get through. I like that idea, but we should have at least had a basic set of decorations, right, for people to play around with. Because as it stands, when people are being required to spend crystalline ore, right, which everybody wants tons of for their new legendaries and stuff, on simple decorations like a basic chair, something seems to be amiss. It looks like ArenaNet agreed with this sentiment, and many more basic decorations have had their recipes and things adjusted to not require the crystalline ore now, which is brilliant, but they only did it with one NPC and not another, so even more, short-sightedness, but over time, hopefully, they'll figure out all of this stuff and fix it up. Speaking of legendaries, there have been some more legendary effects added to the game. These weren't even mentioned in the patch notes as far as I'm aware. The last time we saw a patch where legendary weapon effects were changed was a long time ago, and it was specifically mentioned and talked about, you know, back when Meteorologicus got its awesome footsteps, as well as numerous other changes. Well, there have been a few more. The Flameseeker Prophecies finally has footsteps, also has a really cool sheath and unequip animation that looks like maybe it's translatable, I'm not entirely sure. The Dreamer had some changes, and I believe one other as well. The Howler, unfortunately, has still been left in the dark. The Howler used to have an effect that then got bugged and isn't working, and the devs seem to not realize that that's a thing at all. But maybe one day they'll fix that as well. It would have been nice to have had it all in one patch, but I'm not complaining too much. It's just cool to see stuff like the Flameseeker Prophecies get a little bit more of that quality of life out of nowhere. South Sun Cove farming. Oh man, if I'd known about this, I would have done a video on it right after the patch came out. So, quite recently we had an update that allowed you to get map completion, not just in the new Heart of Thorns areas, but a couple of old maps that had been added too. Silver Waste got map completion rewards, Drytop got map completion rewards, and so did South Sun Cove. Like any maps that you could complete for 100% world completion, there was a chance these would give you a Black Lion key. Exciting stuff, especially for South Sun Cove, for which to get map completion, you only needed, 6 points of interest and 6 waypoints. No hero challenges, no vistas, nothing particularly difficult or messy. There's an easy route to just run in a loop around the map, and you could even accomplish this on super low level characters too, despite it being a level 80 zone. What did this mean? It meant a weird kind of high RNG Black Lion chest key farm, plus other mats, was actually available for a while. I wish I had shown this off to you guys, but this is one of those examples of I don't see it till it gets nerfed. ArenaNet did just nip that in the bud. The rewards on South Sun Cove have now been rebalanced. That's not to say, by the way, that the map bonus reward system isn't actually that profitable. There was an insane amount of money to make in South Sun Cove just recently because of really easy access to charged lodestones and stuff. So do keep an eye out for that. There have been a few days where people have made absolute bank just by watching those map bonus rewards and then playing a lot of the events. Finally, I'll finish the video by talking a little bit about event scaling. Now, we are all familiar, hopefully, at this point with the Tangled Depths, with the Chuck Garrett meta. Many more people playing it now because they're going for their new legendaries. There's more incentive there. Here's the thing with the Chuck Garrett, though. There's 2 lanes which are really easy to do, that being the Ratanovus lane and that being the Ogre lane. And then 2 lanes that are kind of harder. Specifically, Nuhawk seem to have some weird scaling. And it's been unclear to me whether ArenaNet would change that. They want Chuck Garrett to be difficult, it would seem. But do they want it because of this weird scaling at Nuhawk? Or what? Should Nuhawk be so much harder than the other lanes? Is that not a bit imbalanced? Should there be some tweaks there? Well, with this patch did come a lot of tweaks to balance on Tangled Depths events with regard to how they scale and so on. And so if there was going to be a patch where they changed the Chuck Garrett, wouldn't it have been this one? But they didn't. So that could be a statement to us that Chuck Garrett isn't going to change. We need to get good and learn how it rolls if we want those sweet new legendaries. We'll have to see, though. Thanks very much for watching, guys. A lot of this video, of course, on the aura discussion and the idea of skill effect culling. People were very keen on the idea of skill effect culling, not just for PvP. This isn't just about esports, but across the entire game. And I ask now, what exactly has changed? Is this a different crowd of people now speaking out because things are being nerfed down? Auramancing was definitely the biggest contributor in my eyes of skill effect bloat. I had several comments from people saying, you know, this is just disgusting. If you played an Auramancer pre-patch with like a group of Norn characters, you'd see what I mean. And to go back to my basic sentiment here, that the abilities with the big flashy effects should be the really important ones to play around, it just didn't make sense where a lot of the old auras were visually. Spamming those massive effects out was basically one of the most fun things about Auramancing, and I'll be a little sad to see it go. Thanks very much for watching, guys. I'll see you tomorrow for some raid lore. Thanks so much for the 100,000 subs, and I hope you have a good evening.